Ladies, let me tell you something that might sting a little, but it's the truth you need to hear. Too many women are draining themselves, bending over backwards, and sacrificing their self-worth for men who wouldn't do the same for them. And here's the harsh reality: when you give away too much, you don't gain love, you lose respect. Respect for yourself and from him. So today, I'm laying out 9 things you should never, ever do for a man. Because the moment you stop doing these, you don't just protect your heart, you raise your value. Ladies, let me be real with you for a moment. One of the biggest mistakes I see women make is abandoning their dreams for a man. It doesn't always happen all at once, and that's the dangerous part. It happens quietly, slowly, piece by piece, until one day you look back and realize you've traded everything you wanted for yourself just to make someone else comfortable. You had passions, you had ambitions, you had goals that lit a fire in your heart, and somewhere along the way, you put them on a shelf, telling yourself, "I'll get back to that later." But later never comes, because you've spent so much energy fueling someone else's vision that you've run out of fuel for your own. Now let's call it what it is. Love should never require the death of your identity. A man who truly cares about you will never ask you to shrink yourself just so he can shine brighter. He will never want you to trade your calling for his comfort. If the only way the relationship works is if you silence your own voice, then that's not love, that's control. And sometimes it's not even intentional control, it's just that you've convinced yourself that being supportive means being silent. But it doesn't. Support does not mean self-sacrifice. Support means walking side by side, 2 people moving forward together, each still carrying their own dreams. I want you to think about something. If you have a gift, if you have a passion, if you have something inside you that was meant to come alive, what message are you sending to yourself when you bury it for someone else's sake? You're telling yourself, "I don't matter as much." And that belief will leak into every corner of your life. It will affect your confidence, the way you carry yourself, and yes, even the way he looks at you. Because here's the truth: when you let go of your own dreams, you don't become more attractive, you become less. You become a version of yourself that even you don't recognize anymore. And if you don't recognize yourself, how do you expect him to see your worth? You need to understand this. When you chase your purpose, when you pursue the things that make you come alive, that is when you are at your most radiant. That's when you draw people to you, not because you're begging for their attention, but because your energy is undeniable. A strong woman with a vision doesn't have to demand respect. She commands it. And the right man won't just respect that, he'll be inspired by it. He won't feel threatened, he'll feel proud. And if he doesn't, then you just got your answer about whether he's truly for you. And I know some of you have been told the lie that you can't have both a relationship and your dreams. That somehow one has to die for the other to survive, but that's not true. The only relationships worth keeping are the ones that allow you to breathe, to grow, and to build, not the ones that make you smaller. If you can't bring your full self into it, then you're not in a partnership. You're in a cage. So hear me clearly. Never abandon your dreams for a man, because if he's the right one, he'll walk with you as you chase them. And if he's not, no dream is worth being traded for his presence. Your vision matters. Your goals matter. You matter. And the man who deserves you will never ask you to forget that. Ladies, one of the quickest ways to drain yourself in a relationship is to step into a role you were never meant to fill. And that's the role of his mother. Too many women confuse love with caretaking. They think if they fix his problems, clean up his messes, guide his every step, and constantly remind him of what he should be doing, they're proving their loyalty. But what they're really doing is setting themselves up for exhaustion and disappointment. A man doesn't respect a woman who mothers him. He depends on her, yes, but dependence is not the same as respect. You are not here to raise a grown man. If he doesn't know how to manage his responsibilities, that's not your assignment. And here's the thing, when you take on the role of his mother, you strip him of the opportunity to grow. He becomes comfortable with you doing the heavy lifting. You cover for his mistakes, you shield him from consequences, you manage the things he should be managing for himself. And eventually, the relationship shifts from being a partnership to being a parent-child dynamic. That's not love, that's imbalance. And imbalance never leads to fulfillment. Now, I know why some women do this. It comes from a good heart. You want to help, you want to support, you want to nurture. But there's a big difference between being supportive and being his safety net every time he falls short. One empowers him, the other weakens him. And here's the kicker, men actually feel this difference too. When you're always fixing things for him, you think you're making him see your value. But what you're really doing is making yourself feel like the only stable one in the room, while he starts to see you less as a partner and more as a parent figure. And nothing kills attraction faster than that. Attraction thrives on respect. Respect thrives on responsibility. And if you keep robbing him of responsibility, you're also robbing him of the chance to respect you in the way you deserve. Let him handle his own problems. Let him figure out his own path. Let him learn through his own mistakes. That's not coldness, that's boundaries. And boundaries are what keep you from losing yourself in a relationship. Ask yourself this, are you doing things for him that he's fully capable of doing for himself? Are you the one reminding him of every detail, picking up after him, carrying the emotional load he refuses to touch? If the answer is yes, then you've crossed into mothering, not partnering. And the sad truth is the longer you stay in that role, the harder it becomes to break free from it. Because once you've trained a man to expect you to handle everything, he won't just suddenly step up one day. Why would he, when you've shown him you'll always step in? The healthiest relationships are the ones where both people carry their own weight. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but with a shared understanding that each is responsible for themselves first. You should never feel like the relationship would completely collapse if you stop managing it for him. That's not partnership, that's pressure, and pressure eventually breaks you. So if you find yourself being his mother instead of his woman, it's time to step back. Give him the space to be the man he's supposed to be. Because if he can't, then that tells you everything you need to know about where he truly stands. Love doesn't mean raising someone. Love means choosing someone who already stands tall beside you. One of the hardest truths to accept in relationships is this: you should never have to beg a man for his attention. And yet, so many women find themselves doing exactly that. They send text after text, they drop hints, they make excuses for why he hasn't called, and they bend over backwards trying to prove they're worth his time. But here's what you need to understand: when you beg for attention, you don't win his love. You lose your own dignity. Attention that has to be forced is never attention worth keeping. Think about how many times you've rationalized his silence. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe he just doesn't like texting. And while yes, life gets busy, nobody is too busy to make time for the person who matters to them. When someone values you, they don't leave you wondering. They don't go days without speaking to you, and they don't make you question where you stand. Love doesn't operate in uncertainty, it operates in clarity. If a man wants you, you will know it. If he doesn't, you'll feel it in every unanswered call and every excuse you keep making for him. Begging for attention also flips the dynamic of the relationship in the worst way. Instead of being the prize, you start behaving like the pursuer. And here's the problem with that. Once you make someone your center, while they make you their option, the balance of respect disappears. A man doesn't value what he doesn't have to earn. If you hand him your presence while he gives you scraps of his, what you're teaching him is that your time and energy come cheap. And that's not true. You are not cheap. But the way you allow yourself to be treated will either raise your value or lower it in his eyes. You should never find yourself rehearsing ways to grab his attention. You shouldn't feel like you're competing against his phone, his friends, his work, or his distractions just to get a moment of significance. Because the truth is, a man who is truly invested will give you attention freely, not reluctantly. He won't make you beg for a text back or wonder why you don't feel seen. He will prioritize you because that's what men do when they care. And let's be real, when you stop begging for his attention, you give yourself the space to see the truth. You'll see if he's genuinely there for you, or if you've been holding on to potential that was never going to grow. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. Sometimes indifference speaks volumes. And when it does, your job is not to scream louder for him to notice. It's to listen to what that silence is telling you. Here's the reality: attention is not love. Anyone can give you a few moments of their time. What matters is consistent effort, genuine care, and the kind of presence that makes you feel valued. Don't settle for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole meal. And the right man, the one who sees your worth, will never make you chase what should come naturally. So never beg for his attention, because when you stop chasing, you create space for the man who's been ready to give it without you asking. There's one thing that should never, under any circumstance, be negotiated in a relationship, and that is respect. The moment you start tolerating disrespect, even in small doses, you set the standard for how that man will treat you from that point forward. And the truth is, it never starts big. It begins with subtle things. Little comments that sting but you laugh off, small lies you excuse because you don't want to rock the boat, behaviors you know deep down cross a line, but you let slide because you're afraid of losing him. But disrespect tolerated once becomes a habit, and once it becomes a habit, it becomes permanent. You have to understand this: love without respect is not love, it's possession. A man can tell you he cares about you all day long, but if his actions are showing you otherwise, if he's dismissive of your feelings, if he belittles you in public or behind closed doors, if he betrays your trust and expects you to just move past it, that's not care, that's convenience. He wants the benefit of having you without the responsibility of treating you right. And the longer you allow it, the deeper it eats away at your self-worth. Here's the danger of letting disrespect slide. Every time you excuse it, you're training yourself to believe that you deserve less. And when you start believing you deserve less, you stop demanding more. You start rationalizing his behavior, you start comparing him to men who are worse, so you can convince yourself it's not that bad. And before you know it, you're living in a version of love that looks nothing like what you dreamed of. That's how people lose themselves. Not all at once, but in small pieces every time they accept what they know in their heart is unacceptable. And let's be real, disrespect is not always loud. Sometimes it's not screaming or cheating or name calling. Sometimes it's silence when you need reassurance. Sometimes it's making decisions that affect both of you without considering your input. Sometimes it's forgetting your worth in the little ways that add up over time. Whether loud or quiet, it all sends the same message: your value doesn't matter here. And if you believe that, you'll end up trapped in a relationship where you're fighting for a place that should have been yours by default. A man who truly values you will never make you question whether you're respected. You won't have to guess, you won't have to beg, and you won't have to settle for crumbs. Respect will be built into the way he speaks to you, the way he listens, the way he shows up when he says he will, and the way he protects the bond you share. That's the kind of foundation love requires, and without it, the relationship will eventually crumble. So you have a choice. Every time disrespect shows up, you either confront it or you condone it. And if you condone it, it grows. But if you confront it and he refuses to change, then you walk away. Because it's better to stand alone with your dignity than to stay connected to someone who chips away at it daily. Never tolerate disrespect from a man. Because the second you accept it, you teach him that's all he needs to give. And the woman you are, the woman you're becoming, deserves far more than that. One of the most damaging patterns a woman can fall into is paying the price for a man's irresponsibility. And I don't just mean financially, although that's part of it. I mean emotionally, mentally, physically, carrying the weight of his choices while he avoids the consequences. Too many women convince themselves that covering for him, cleaning up his mess, or rescuing him from his own bad decisions is loyalty. But loyalty doesn't mean sacrificing your peace to protect someone from lessons they should be learning on their own. That's not loyalty, it's enabling. Think about what happens when you constantly step in. He overspends, and you help him pay his bills. He forgets his commitments, and you're the one apologizing on his behalf. He creates drama, and you're the one holding everything together so things don't completely fall apart. At first, it feels like you're just being supportive, but over time, what you're really doing is carrying a load that was never meant for you. And while you're carrying it, he has no reason to change, because why would he? He's already learned that no matter what, you'll pick up the slack. And the dangerous part is this: while you're holding his burdens, yours get heavier. You start losing your energy, your joy, your focus, because all of your strength is being spent trying to keep him afloat. And in the process, you forget that you were never meant to be his lifeboat. You were meant to be his partner. But partnership can only exist when both people show up fully, each taking responsibility for their own actions. When you take responsibility for someone else's irresponsibility, you're not helping them grow. You're stunting them. Growth comes from facing consequences, from feeling the weight of your own choices and realizing you have to do better. If you keep shielding him from that, you're actually keeping him weak. And the truth is, a weak man will eventually resent the very woman who carried him, because deep down, he knows he's not standing on his own 2 feet. I know it's not easy to step back. Some of you feel like if you don't intervene, everything will collapse. But here's the thing. If the only way your relationship functions is when you sacrifice yourself to keep it together, then you don't have a relationship, you have a dependency. And dependency is not love. Love is choosing each other daily, not draining one person so the other can remain comfortable in their chaos. You have to decide what kind of partner you want to be. Do you want to be the one who constantly patches holes in his boat? Or do you want to be with someone who knows how to steer his own ship? Because at the end of the day, a man who refuses to take responsibility for his life will eventually drag you down with him. And the longer you carry his weight, the harder it becomes to separate your future from his failures. So don't pay the price for his irresponsibility. Let him feel the weight of his own actions. Let him learn through his own mistakes. Because the right man, the man who is worthy of you, won't put you in a position where you're forced to sacrifice your peace for his poor choices. He'll stand on his own, and he'll meet you where you are, strong, steady, and equal. One of the most dangerous mistakes a woman can make in a relationship is losing herself in it. And I don't mean love shouldn't change you. It should. Love should grow you, stretch you, teach you things about yourself you didn't know. But there's a big difference between growing with someone and disappearing into them. Too often, I see women slowly let go of the things that make them who they are. They stop spending time with their friends. They drift away from their passions. They change their values just to keep the peace. And without realizing it, they've sacrificed their identity just to hold on to a relationship. Here's the hard truth. When you give up who you are to keep someone else, you don't actually keep them. You just keep a fragile version of the relationship that's built on sacrifice instead of authenticity. And eventually, that kind of relationship breaks because no one can live forever pretending to be someone they're not. Even if it lasts, you'll wake up one day and realize the price you paid for keeping him was losing yourself. And that is far too expensive a price. A healthy relationship is not about erasing your individuality. It's about bringing your full self to the table and still being chosen. The friends you had before him still matter. The passions you carried long before he showed up still matter. The values you stood on before you fell in love still matter. And if you give all of that up, you'll find yourself empty, relying entirely on his presence to define your worth. That's not partnership, that's dependency. Think about the people in your life who inspire you the most. They're not people who abandoned their essence to fit into someone else's world. They're people who stayed true to who they were, no matter who walked in or out of their lives. That's what makes them magnetic. That's what makes them powerful. And that's exactly why you need to protect your identity inside a relationship. Because when you know who you are, you bring strength to the table. When you lose who you are, you bring silence, and silence gets overlooked every time. A man who genuinely loves you won't want you to shrink. He'll want you to expand. He'll push you toward your passions, not pull you away from them. He'll celebrate your friendships, not isolate you from them. He'll respect your values, not ask you to compromise them just to make him comfortable. The right relationship adds to who you are. It doesn't erase it. And if you feel yourself disappearing, if you can't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore because you've molded yourself completely around him, that's your signal something's deeply wrong. Losing yourself doesn't happen overnight. It's subtle. It's one yes to something you didn't believe in. It's one I'll skip this to avoid an argument. It's one I'll let it go when your heart is screaming not to. Those little moments add up. And before long, the woman who used to laugh loud, dream big, and live boldly is gone. But you deserve better than being a shadow of yourself just to hold on to someone who doesn't appreciate the real you. So never lose yourself in the process of loving a man, because if the only way he'll stay is if you stop being you, then he's not the one worth keeping.